Hello, hello. Welcome to another Humpday Q&A.
Oh la la la. Merry, merry.
Merry Christmas.
You know what? My optometrist would be telling me right now that since Simon's light is all blue, I should be using these to block the blue light.
It's not that bad. I thought I'd give that a go. So this is that lighting that Roman was suggesting the other day. So I thought, buy some, give it a go, see what it looks like. Right. Let's start things off. Actually, let's bring Randall on. Randall, you're here. There you go.
Yay! Hi. Happy Festivus for the rest of us if you're celebrating that on Friday.
Solstice.
Happy solstice in about 4 hours. 4 hours from now is the solstice. Yes.
So let's get on with introductions and introduce our guest, and we'll get going so we can make the best use of our hour and a bit. Right.
Yep.
So do's and don'ts. Scott.
Do's and don'ts. Be respectful. Be constructive. We have standards. Don't post anything that's adult, rude, offensive. Don't advertise or promote your service, your company, whatever. Don't tell people, please download my app. Don't keep posting your question over and over again. Every time we get your question, we put it at the bottom of the list. If it was already in the list, we take it out of the middle of the list and put it back at the bottom. So if you want to make sure your question never gets answered, keep asking it. Harassment of any kind is not tolerated, obviously. Incels, bigotry, et cetera, you'll be blocked from here. We share ban lists with everybody else all over the community. And remember to have a good time.
Yes, indeed. Remember to have a good time. And then, of course, let's do our introductions here. My name's Simon Lightfoot, community leader and CTO at Dev Angels London. And you can follow me on Twitter at Dev Angels London. Scott
Stahl. Community leader, also a GDG coordinator, organizer, sorry. Do a whole bunch of other stuff that you don't really care about, but really rescuing older pit bulls is the best thing I do. And you can reach me at scott@fluttercommunity.social first, and then maybe at Scott Stahl 2017 on Twitter.
Should we start having to update all our stuff from Twitter to our Flutter community social?
Should I tell them about the nice conversation I had with Jake Wharton? Was actually
let's leave that another time.
Right.
Randall, introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Randall Schwartz. I'm a Google Google developer expert in Dart and Flutter. I'm also a full-time Flutter hacker. And I've been working with Flutter and Dart since their very beginnings. I am also the question magician for this show, which means I am watching the chat, looking for your chat lines that start with Q:. We will queue those up. Oh, good onomatopoeia there. We'll queue those up for the people that are on the panel, and we actually have a guest today, so that should be even more interesting.
And talking about a guest, Gianfranco, come to the stage. There you go.
Hi,
welcome. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. I am Gianfranco Papa. I have an Italian name, but I'm Uruguayan. So that means I'm the organizer of Flutter Uruguay. And I'm also CTO and co-founder at Somnia Software. It is a company that we basically specialize in Flutter apps. We are a dev shop, and we are 100% focused on this technology. So really glad to be here today.
Nice.
Yeah, welcome.
Thanks.
So yeah, if you have any questions, get them into the chat, everyone. Make sure you put that queue in front, and we'll get going. So Randall, you said you've been monitoring the what did you say? There's a new was it pre-release version of Flutter that's gone out?
Yeah, there's a new beta release as of yesterday. Another in the series of the 3.7 candidate releases. So they're aiming towards 3.7. One would suspect just by looking at the commits for the Flutter and Dart repos, the 3.7 might have something to do with an event in January. But that's just a guess.
I think
we have. Wow. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, okay.
Well, okay. No, we have some interesting cast of characters in here today. We've got Nick from work. We got Matt Jones. We've got Craig. We've also got Felix.
That's right.
The holiday show is popular.
Exactly.
Merry Christmas,
We're just here to see Gianfranco.
They're all tired from shopping, or they
Is it-
got the day off because of other holidays.
Yeah.
I think it's almost like a Flutter Backend's reunion here, right?
It often is.
Yeah, that's another thing. We didn't actually. I think we did we first meet. No, we must have met at Engage or Interact, right?
No, we met at Flutter Backends. Yeah.
Oh, really? It was the first time. We must have spoken
At
online.
where?
Vikings.
Oh, Vikings.
Yeah,
I thought
but I was
maybe we had
wondering
met
if
before that, but
no, apparently not. No, at least one of the Flutter events.
Yeah. I mean, in person, definitely. Yeah.
All right, let's see what we've got in the pipe. But yeah, get your questions in, everyone.
yes.
Look, even Felix has got fans here. Look, Felix got fans everywhere.
Oh my god! And
Yes.
Felix's fan is Matt. How's that? And I think Matt's got fans.
Yeah.
So
Gianfranco,
I guess.
well, I was going to say we don't often get guests from Sudamerica.
Yeah.
So
right.
what is going to be going on? Because we've got a guy at our work actually who's going to be going to South America here in January. So what's going on in Flutter down there?
In Flutter, I mean, I guess that here in Uruguay is getting like really popular Flutter because I mean here at Somnia Software we specialize in this technology and we are like as we are like focusing only in this technology, every developer here is like trying Flutter, and I noticed that especially in Uruguay is kind of like growing a lot. And I'm in really like in contact with a lot of members of Flutter in Latin America, in Mexico, in Colombia, Peru as well. Yeah, we have like a really cool group where we chat and yeah, let's hope to have like hopefully like more events in Latin America, such as for example we saw in Europe. Yeah, so I think like it's growing quite a lot here in Latin America. Yeah,
It'd be nice
Cool.
to see all the all those meetup groups from sort of South America all join together to do like a conference or something for South America.
Well, it's
So that would be.
South
I mean-
America's really big, man. really
Yeah.
big.
No, I know that, but the
going
thing is, like,
London to, yeah.
no. I'm thinking about travel. Like again, it's like travel. You can talk about having them in Europe and having them in other places, but travel's the hardest thing. So traveling in country, as it were, or in continent, like that's got to be a lot easier than traveling across the Pacific or Atlantic, right? Anyway,
Or-
Well,
Yeah.
I guess
I would
that's true,
hope so.
because you didn't have any problem traveling till you got to Madrid.
yeah. but yeah, I mean, yeah, hopefully we will have like something big here in Latin America. I mean, it will be awesome.
It'd be cool.
Yeah. Have you been in Latin America so far, or like?
Not yet.
no.
Not yet. I hope so.
Oh, Randall says yes.
Many-
Rand,
Many,
Brad, what do you think?
many times. I have sailed the Horn 3 times already on cruise ships.
Oh, nice.
So I've been all the way from the west side to the east side, ending up in Argentina on the east side, and starting in Chile to begin with. But in every spot, and including the fin de mundo, end of the world, all the way at the south end in Ushuaia. So I've been there. Yeah.
Well,
no
you're
internet there
like-
really.
near Argentina, so you
Yeah.
just passed that. Yeah.
Yep.
You know what would be good is maybe if we had an extended show or a separate show where we brought in a lot of Latin American, Mexican developers, Spanish developers, and just switch the show to Spanish.
Yeah.
That would be
just,
really nice.
Take
yeah.
off, hand it over to you, and
mean, this-
hand it over to you and Angel, Diego, Mariano. and
Yeah.
just have fun.
yeah.
That would be really cool, yeah. I mean,
I'm at that dangerous spot where I know just enough Spanish to get me into trouble in a bar and not enough to get me out of trouble. So very, very dangerous spot to know in Spanish.
Well,
right then.
Sorry.
Should
Go
we
ahead.
get on?
Bad joke.
Get to the first
yes.
question.
Oh
I
yeah,
guess.
there's this thing called Flutter
Yes.
we're supposed to be talking about.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Stack up. Matthew
Trying
says,
to simulate a word processor in Flutter, kind of like an editor.
Woohoo!
I know when content is overflowing the container, so I can move it onto the next page, but what's the best way to do this?
with great difficulty.
Yes.
Well, you
So-
need
so
to
the
split
thing
the
is-
string. Go ahead.
The problem here is each page is you get into this kind of like, the problem is you're trying to lay stuff out, and then once it's laid out, you need to move it on to the next container.
Yeah.
I guess. Oh, we lost a Scott.
Yep.
That
happens.
It's kind of an interesting one, right? Because the problem here is that layout's already taken place, right? So layout's taken place, you know how big the widgets are on the inside of your container, and therefore that denotes how many containers you have. That's a curious one. I mean, you can do it.
I did tell somebody how to approach this very same problem. And that is, you start looking at the code where it adds the ellipsis on an overflow for a text widget. And you look at the code around that, and you can see how it knows when it's not going to be able to put the next word there. And if you subclass that render class, then it's something about something in the middle of render paragraph, as I believe, as I remember. Then you can get a hook that says, now we're going to take this word and put it somewhere else.
I'm kind of curious if this is if Matthew is talking specifically around text. So Matt, if you could follow this up with a question, are you talking about text or just widgets and other content?
Yeah.
Because the thing is, doing flowing layouts is always a difficult thing. There's already some good. There's actually some good stuff out there already that does this.
Sure.
I think there's. I mean, if we're talking about text, there should be like, for example, super editor, I think, or super list. They are focusing on trying to improve this experience.
But I think the key here is they don't. They flow in one column, right? So they work the same as like a list view or like any sort of sliver list where the content just flows in one direction. I think the thing here, Matthew, I'd say is, why do you, if you need to separate into specific pages, then that's something to look at. Definitely as a separate problem. The thing is, you need something that actually, essentially what you need to, you get into this position where you actually need to reparent and change the layout, reparent and change the widget structure as layout takes place, which you can do. It's the same as a layout builder. But however, you can start going to the realms of custom render objects and things. It's definitely possible. And I could definitely direct you into the right way, and we can have a play around with it. But the thing is, it's not simple. And I'd say, it doesn't need to be in these like containers, right? That's where I'd go first of all. But yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely
have fun. Have fun. Share your work when you're done. We'll all want it. Yeah.
So basically, during layout of your child widgets, you can then group them into basically restructure the element tree. When you restructure the element tree, that can then you then forward onto the super render, and it will go down and then render those. So you're essentially changing the layout, the structure of your widgets into, say, pages. Let's say, I'm assuming you say container, you mean like a page, and then you can do that. It's definitely possible. It's just it's not the norm.
Yeah,
it's an interesting use case. I really do like that one. Actually, it's a good question.
Yep.
All right, let's. I guess we'll carry on to the next one.
What about Dart for Backend? Have you tried to use it on the back end? Oh boy.
Wait. Okay.
Yeah. Excuse me.
I'm kind of curious. Yeah. Are there any? Have you been using Dart in the back end for any of your clients or stuff that you've been doing there?
For any clients, actually, like it's a good question. I mean, we've been trying like internally, but we haven't just like had like a project where we put Dart in production. But lately we tried like Dart Frog and a lot of Shelf also. Different options, just such as gRPC. I mean, there are times, because we work also like in a modality that is like more stuff augmentation. We've been in projects where Dart was in backend, but we weren't responsible for that. We were only providing like Flutter development. But yeah, I'm really curious lately of the power of Dart in the backend because yeah, ultimately we all know Dart and we can become like some kind of full stack developers, right? So probably next year we will try to push a project to have like Dart in the backend and us being responsible for that, right? So, so yeah, that's why lately I've been like also writing some blogs about Dart Frog because I consider that this is really interesting, like the way we can reuse most of our code and yeah, just like uh, have a lower bridge between like the front end and the back end, right?
Oh, for
But
sure.
yeah.
Well, I was just trying to find. So me and Craig Lebenz did a playlist, like a 3-part. Just deaf myself. Hang on. There we go. We did a 3-part. Here it is. I'll pop this in the chat. We did like a little 3-part mini series just to show how to use Cloud Run and Dart at the back end, and probably a good place to start. That's in the chat.
Cool.
If you want to. That we use Cloud Run. I mean, essentially, what you use Dart for your backend, as Jim was saying, like you can use Dart Frog. There's what's it, server pod.
Right.
There's the conduit, which is the Aqueduct. I think it is.
Yes.
Aqueduct was closed down. It was open sourced and or carried on with open source community into the conduit. Yeah. That's another option.
Yeah.
And I prefer, like at the moment, I just like using Shelf. It's nice, simple. There's lots of Shelf. If you go look on pub.dev and just search Shelf, you'll find Shelf router. You'll find Shelf statics hosting. You'll find there's like a bunch of like helper packages that you just plug into Shelf. So that feels like it has
I would take
ecosystem right now.
I would take Shelf and then say what depends on it in the pub and take a look at those and see which of those are popular too. Because anything that depends on Shelf is going to be something that's all in the same genre that has the same sort of base capabilities of delivering pages based on a web hit. And that's going to be something like you're looking for.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think recently Dart Frog is supporting WebSockets. So if you were worried about like supporting that use case, you also have it right now. So
there's actually there's also Shelf WebSockets as well. I've actually used that in the project. Yep. In fact, I think me and Craig actually used it in those videos. So,
cool.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. So
speaking of Dart for backend, I know there's a little project that Simon said he's going to do in his spare time at midnight and over Christmas. What was that server you're looking at improving? Mastodon.
Oh yeah. No, I was saying because that'd be really fun, right? So we were playing around with the getting the Mastodon instance up and running, and everything for the community, and it just the app. I don't like the official Mastodon app. There's other apps. It's open source, right? So I think the community needs to come together and work on a Flutter client, but the client's just half of this, right? The server side is the other one, right? Like it'd be really nice to have a Dart-based Mastodon server that we can extend and really sort of like structure out, and then you might as well take the next step and go, okay, let's have the website, in Flutter or Dart at least, and you could really like take that step further. But yeah, finding the time, if only. Yeah, so I've actually just so it's let me just share my screen here. There you go. So I just looked up Shelf as we're just talking about this, and yeah, there you go. So this is dependency Shelf, and yeah, Shelf router, Shelf static, Shelf proxy, Dart Frog, Flutter Rust Bridge, brand that uses it, Puppeteer, functions framework. There's just tons and tons of content on. It's really slow today. I don't know what. Anyway, Shelf Plus, Shelf WebSocket, Shelf Multipart, Shelf Router Generator, Shelf Hot Reload. You name it, you'll find it on there, I'm sure. But yeah, I think that's a good starting point for backend. Right, next question, I guess. I have questions. Does Somnio have one refined architectural design pattern that it prefers to use for custom projects. There you go.
Okay, maybe I can answer this one. So yeah, I mean, we know that Flutter is not so opinionated, so we need to define an architecture, a way of work. So we imagine we are like a team of almost, I think, like 35 developers. So like we have to maintain certain standards. I would say that we kind of like reuse like best practices from the whole community. We are really aligned with, let's say, some practices from very good mentors, such as the use of block, for example, or even like the modularization of the projects, like keeping everything in a pure Dart package, and having like the presentation layer, the state management layer that is also part of the presentation layer, the repository pattern, the repository layer, and the data layer. And I would say like we also incorporate other things such as co-router or the use of Melos for keeping everything, like all of the packages, and try to manage the whole monorepo like better. So it is almost a combination of like what we consider like really the best practices. But we usually try to like keep it simple and try to incorporate like those things slowly and progressively, so we know what we are doing, and we can like transmit all of that knowledge to the whole team, right? So yeah, that would be in summary, in short, like what is the architecture that we use. Yeah.
I'd say it's probably the same for us. I mean, like when we do stuff, it's like, yeah, whatever, as long as it's consistent for the project, right? So it could be like block, it could be Riverpods provider, whatever. That pick your package, but that's just the state management essentially for the front end UI, right? The rest of this sort of goes into normally a repository pattern and a sort of a service pattern, have layers of architecture. It means that you can like kind of test your backend functionality with that UI, and you can also test the UI interacting with that backend and making sure it's working correctly. So you have, and then you can obviously do integration tests for the entire sort of architecture. But I think,
but I think that it also depends on the project, right? And not only like the size of the project, but also like the size of the team. Because imagine like having a project that is, for example, you need like 15 developers, right? So I guess like lately I've been thinking that maybe you can apply some kind of like micro front end architecture where every team is concerning about like a module, and then you somehow try to like keep everything together, right? And in that case, maybe a monorepo is not like the best thing. I mean, keeping everything under the lib folder, right? So yeah, there are other alternatives, such as like, for example, creating a module specifically for that use case, and for example, a team will be concerned about that, and that will keep everything inside that, like the presentation layer, the business logic, and also the network. But yeah, we didn't apply that in a project, mainly because, as I said, like we didn't have like a project with a large number of people inside that project. I think that will be a really cool use case for if you have to have like a project with a lot of people inside that, like a lot of developers. I don't know what are your thoughts on that.
I was thinking about that actually. Like it is one of those things where you want to make sure that you separate the code enough so that people can work independently without having lots of merge conflicts and problems when trying to work on stuff. I think having a monorepo still makes the most sense. You can just have different modules. You don't have to be all done in one project, right? Right. We do that anyway. So you just break up your application different modules, but being different modules or the same code base, it doesn't mean you make any difference. You're going to get merge conflicts if you're all working on the same piece of code. So I think it's about, again, working to an interface, right? It's like making sure you've got enough layers of control. But at the end of the day is if you put 15 developers on, like it's that same thing, right? You can't put 15 developers on building one screen, right? I mean, you could, but I mean, don't get me wrong, right? You could, right? But the point here is like, it would just all.
I've got uppercase. Right? I've got uppercase.
Well, exactly, right?
You've got lowercase.
You've got the title. No, but
I do
point
the new
is,
lines.
like,
I do the new lines. I'll
the
take
point
care
I'm
of
trying to
that.
make is it gets ridiculous, right? So I think there's also like there's too much communication. You can get into the situation too much communication, too much overhead, too many cooks in the kitchen, as it were. Too many people. So I think it was always when you're dealing with sort of the sort of management of a project, you want to make sure you kind of get that right balance. But yeah, like as the project gets bigger and like you can separate things off into modules, then obviously you can get teams working on separate things. That's the ideal. But yeah, you trying to have too many people working on the same piece of code is always going to be problematic. Anyway, I think that hopefully that answers your question and more. I have questions.
Yeah.
Next,
let me take the next one. It's going to come up and it's going to keep coming up. It's going to keep coming up. So I just want to say, yes, there are guesses. No, we don't have any special information. Maybe. So no, watch the skies, watch the show.
I'm waiting to see what we get surprised with this time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
As much as we do, and as friendly as we are with a lot of members of the Flutter team, they didn't even tell us Flutter Web was coming.
Yeah.
They ran us over. I'm sorry, desktop. They ran us over with that bus.
Yes.
There are a number of other.
And remember,
times
we're not.
Hey, Craig.
We're not Google.
Craig,
we
come to
are
Ohio.
just people in the community. So we not Google. We're not privy to inside information mostly. I have to say this because I have an NDA with Google, so I actually see things that.
I think we all have NDAs with Google.
We're all so, and it's the thing is, it may not even be.
We can't talk about it. Yeah, we can't talk about it.
Anyway,
I will also just briefly mention just since it's tomorrow, isn't it? Yeah, 22. Yeah. So Craig just had to leave, but tomorrow Craig's doing another live stream on the official Flutter channel, so you should join for that. That's
cool.
Also working on server-side code. In this case, it's going to be Google Pay and Flutter, I think. So
nice.
Just want to mention that since he's had to leave. Okay. So all right, that question's answered. Let's go to the next one.
Yes. No more questions about Flutter Forward.
Decorative border rounding. Is one more expensive? The answer is absolutely yes.
When to use clip rect and when to use decorated border rounding is one more expensive. Yeah. Clipping is always more expensive, right? Because think about this, right? You're rendering more pixels, and then you're saying clipping them and saying don't. It means that every time a pixel has to be rendered, it has to go, are you inside or outside of my clip region? If you're outside, don't render the pixel. If you're inside, keep it, right? Now, the other way of doing this is just render the round corners, and then you don't have to do that check, right? Mm-hmm. So always go for specifying, like let's say on a material, it's like, or even on Inkwell, specify the custom shape on Inkwell to limit the splash to the rounded corner edges, and you put that rounded rectangle border on everything, and you're going to get a better response than just wrapping it all in the clip art rect. The more clip recs, especially the more clip recs that are, there's actually a problem that the Flutter team resolved. So originally Flutter it was clipping all rendering on like every material it was clipping, there's a bunch of stuff that was just clipping all over the place. And what they found was it tries to render the wrong pixel, and then it has to check all the clip recs in the stack, because it has to know if it's going to render this pixel down to the screen. And suddenly it's not just checking one, it's now checking 15 times for every pixel essentially on the screen. And then that just gets super duper expensive. So if you don't need to render the pixels, don't render the pixels. That's the answer.
And another way to look at this is the clip art rect actually is inserting a render object and it's modifying the tree under it, which is what Simon said. It renders all those pixels, then it takes a render object and starts chopping out the ones that it doesn't need. So the subtree beneath it is affected, whereas if you're just doing a box decoration and border radius, which we put in a sized box, ignore that word container, it just draws a box with rounded corners and it's not affecting the subtree at all. Therefore, you don't have to go through all of that processing. So again, two different ways of phrasing the same thing. Mm-hmm. Simon and I do that all the time, every day. All right,
Next.
wearables. Oh, yes.
Can we create apps with Flutter for wearable devices? Yes. There you go.
And,
Well, can
Yes.
you create it? We don't know.
well,
We
and
know
I
people
just turned
can.
around and bought the new Pixel Watch exactly for this, because if you take a look, there was this article right here on the 25th of June 2019.
June.
If that's not recent enough for you, we can always go look at the Wear package that was March 1st, 2022. And if that's not recent enough for you, we have the Wear OS connectivity that was just published last month. So Apple Watch, it's an Apple product. It doesn't play nice with anything.
Yeah.
You can so anything you can do, anything you, just break this down. Anything I want to clear this point up because people always have a problem with this. I always have to explain it. Anything you can do on an Android app, you can still do with Flutter. Anything you can do on an iOS app, you can still do with Flutter. Nothing's stopping you from making a Flutter app that has a wearable iOS experience, right? Because you can still do that with a native code. You can still do that in your Xcode project. Nothing stops you from doing that. And then you can also then extend that with your Flutter mobile phone app. But what you can't do right now is run the UI on your phone from Flutter using Flutter's widgets.
Right.
That's
the Wear OS pack. The Wear OS is just another version of Android. Whereas I think the problem is that the Apple Watch does not run a regular iOS, does it?
Don't think so.
I don't think so.
I
think it's WatchOS. Yeah.
So, by the way, if Felix answers one more question, he'll have answered more than us. So he needs to get his ruined on the stream. Felix,
you
the link.
You have to come on the stream.
I'm shooting him the link right now. Get on the stream, Felix.
So let's carry on here. Andrea. Sorry, I'm terrible with names. Simon mentioned using mixins and chucking a provider of in something like that. Can you elaborate? Sounds interesting. I couldn't figure out what you meant. I'll tell you what. We'll do a little. I was gonna do a little bit of live coding to show. I was talking to someone last week between the shows about some responsive design layout stuff, and it occurred to me that a lot of people don't understand some of that stuff. And actually, I can show you an example of using this in that. So I'm going to put this question on hold, and if we get to the very end, we'll do a little bit of live content in the show.
Nice.
So we'll leave that one in the top of the list here. Next question.
Felix, FSG. Moving on.
Why will any of you be in Flutter Heroes Touring Conference in February?
I wish.
Yeah, sadly, no one's reached out to me from Flutter Heroes to do that. I don't think. Yeah. To be honest,
they may not have. I mean, travel is just expensive.
Yeah.
I've seen Flutter Heroes, but I know it's in person to Italy.
Yeah.
So,
I was just thinking about this, for very much what I've been doing. The season for conferences is the end of the year always, and it's very infrequent for me to do conferences at the start of the year. But we'll see.
And
I've got no plans yet.
Travel is so expensive. Conferences can't always afford to have people travel. Although it looks like Felix might be there with some people from VGV, unless he's talking about coming on the stream with some people from VGV, which would be cool. We haven't seen Yaron in years, man. You guys have been hiding him in the basement or what?
Yeah, they stole him away. Seven matter. Can I access Flutter engine in C++ file and then use it in Flutter to help with Dart FFI? I think you need to expound upon that slightly. What are you trying to achieve? So can I access Flutter engine in C++ file? You can access the Dart API. So it depends on what you're trying to do from your C++. As far as I know, there's no lookup mechanism for looking up the native functions that are exposed from the Flutter engine to the Dart layer. But I don't see any reason why you couldn't call them. You can still use the Dart API to find those methods and call them. So yes, you can call them from Dart FFI. What you're missing let me point you in the right direction here. In the Dart Lang repo, I'll find it. Okay. Now I'll bring this up on stream. Let's see. So if you go to Dart Lang SDK, and you'll find Dart API. So you'll find the Dart API DL. That's the one, runtime. So this is the dynamic implementation that lets you look up and find functions. So this actually marries up with FFI. Yeah, so it's Dart init, something like that, init. The one time I won't remember what it is. Hang on, Dart API. Native API. That's the one. I know it's in there somewhere.
I will be right back. We have some dog maintenance to do here.
Yep.
Okay, so you see here, this says utilities for accessing Dart VM API from Dart code or from C code via the Dart API DL.h. So basically, this provides the initial. This pointer is what you send back to your C code. That's what's used by this function. That's what you pass into this, and that then gives you all the essentially the function pointer table to all the functions. And if we go into, I'll post this in the chat so you don't have to look it up. And then this is the entire Dart API. So this allows you to, from your C code, to dynamically call sort of get error, new handle, find class, create a sample, all that kind of fun stuff. And then with that, you can program and hook into anything inside, essentially communicate back to Dart for various things. So hopefully that points in the right direction. I'll pop that in the chat for you, both of those two things. And you can also hear that new native port post C object, and you can sort of communicate back and forth. Yeah, it's an interesting stuff. But hopefully that puts you in the right direction. What you're trying to access from the Flutter engine depends. That matters. So not all of it's accessible, but hopefully that puts you in the right direction to go start looking. All right, I guess next one, Amir. Nice to see you again, guys. As a person living in a small city, how would I develop, expand my network, make connections, since it's really the main major of getting good offers? Assume you mean work offers. I mean, have you got any ideas, Gianfranco?
Well, that's a good question. I assume that he's referring about like job like work offers, but I don't think like it is like living in a small city is not it's a negative factor, right? I mean, probably like starting by, I mean, being here, you are just like being part of the community, like having Twitter, LinkedIn. Those are things that, for example, for me, were not things that I certainly learned in the university, but then I discovered that you have to also show your work. And I guess that, try to not think so much as a developer and focus on code, but also like, try to be active on LinkedIn or in Twitter and communities, Discord or Slack. So
there's always also, online. Go on.
And it's almost as if we only had an organization that existed to try to help developers connect with the rest of their developer community, like that one. This is the
you're gonna have to zoom in a bit.
Enhance.
There we go. GDG, and it is gdg.community.dev. I will throw that in the chat right now. But yeah, you definitely get started there, and you'll see things. Dog. You will see. You'll see events.
Dog wants to be part.
Most of them are at least hybrid. A lot of them are remote. You'll still be able to meet people through there. Follow people on Twitter, on Mastodon. and Slacks, Discords. This is how actually we all pretty much do it, even if we're in a big city, because a lot of people have not left home very much due to COVID. So this is how we built a lot of our networks. But GDG is awesome. It's worldwide. No matter where you are, there's something going on. So be sure to check it out.
I mean,
Yeah, probably.
So I was going to quickly mention that there is the Flutter Meetup network as well, right? And that link to that is in the chat. And there's lots of locations worldwide. I don't know what location you're in, but I know you're talking about travel. But you could travel to some of these, maybe some in-person things. Mm-hmm. Then you hand out your online credentials. Like, follow me on Twitter, follow me. I can sort that out for you. I can fix that for you. I can work with you on this thing. And before you know it, you'll be networking, right? The thing is. It's like when you're in the middle of nowhere, again, it's very hard to make that initial seed. So if you can travel to get some initial communications and do some initial networking, those people can help you find other people. But again, a lot of this is all online now. So,
yeah. And no one tell Nilay that I mentioned GDG without mentioning the Flutter Meetup network. I'll be in trouble.
So she's watching you.
Trouble.
It's going to happen. All right.
Speaking of...
Sorry, Gianfranco, did you want to add something?
I mean, I was going to say that probably if you're in a small city, it's a good opportunity to start your own community. I mean, or being in touch with a bigger city. If I don't know where you are at. If you're at nowhere, I don't know, but probably starting a community in your city would be a good idea. Yeah.
I mean, there's also like you'd be surprised at what might be around you. I think go searching for opportunity. Opportunity, you can't just expect. This is the thing that I think I expect other people around, but opportunity just doesn't arrive to you. You have to go find opportunity, right? Right. It's very infrequent that something's just going to be given to you, saying, "Oh, do you mind doing this?" or "Oh, I want to employ you to do that." Right. Normally, it'd be you going to find the opportunity, and then someone replying back to you saying, okay, that's perfect. You're a perfect fit for whatever we're trying to do." So, find that opportunity, make your own luck, as it were, right? So, I'd say. That can range from a lot of different things, but
I'm seeing a comment.
I was going to continue just briefly. My point here was there's local organizations that aren't relating to software and programming that probably want your help, right? So there could just be local businesses that want apps made. There could be, let's say there could be business clubs and things for local companies to join that have someone that does their websites and that don't have anyone to do their apps, right? Boom, you jump in there and do your apps, right? So there's you need to go find the opportunities, right? You need to go work out how you can fit your local area, basically, and then see where you can go from there. But again, a lot of work can be done online now. A lot of the programming and development work is done remotely. So,
yeah. I'm also noticing something. This, Navdeep, you're not understanding what different things are right now. GDGs are a meetup group. They're a type of meetup group. They meet once a month, once every 90 days, once a week. They really don't have tickets.
They might have tickets
now
for
you
events.
might be talking about a dev fest that GDG's put on, and that's a small conference. But the GDG typically is just doing meetings with like one presentation or a social event where everyone gets together. But the bigger conferences with lots of different talks, those are dev fests, and GDGs do run those. But they are far from the only conferences. Dev fests are just one type. But yeah, you don't need a ticket to go to a dev fest, to go to a GDG meeting. Although some of them you might need $2 in order to help pay for the pizza.
Right.
Or at least RSVP sometimes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Next question. What will Impeller bring on the table, and when do you think it would be in stable Flutter? I mean, when it's finished and it's stable. Honestly, we don't follow. I mean, you could go follow the repo yourself and go look and see what progress it's all in the open. They've got the project boards, and I think there's Impeller project board. In fact, we could go looking for that. So
Impeller is
first thing-
definitely
I mean,
moving forward, though. Yes.
oh yeah, for sure. So the first thing I would do to answer, I'm just going to answer your question. Like, it's like, yeah, there's no point saying Google that, right? but yeah, so you go to Flutter. And in this case, it's actually Flutter. Well, you got Flutter. There's a project boards. Let's go look at Flutter Engine. So Flutter Engine is where the code sits, and then here you'll find Impeller, and inside this you'll find all the source code, including a little like graphic. This is actually rendered with Impeller, and it talks about what it is, what the progress is like, what each of the folders is, and how it all works, and what they expect the shader pipeline to be like, and lots of documentation and how it all works. So I'm sure you can find all the content you want from here. There is also, I think, if I remember right, there's a 3D example somewhere. I forget which. I forget where it was in here. Oh, scene. I think it was scene. Yeah. So this again, this is a 3D renderer, and then this is the Impeller C++ code for like creating an animation and creating up your materials and so on and so forth, create a scene and animate the camera and all that kind of fun stuff. So yeah, it's all here. I'll pop that in the chat. There is, I'm pretty sure that there's an Impeller search. Impeller. I'm pretty sure I saw an Impeller project board somewhere. Don't ask me where. Well, it might be listed under engine somewhere, or rendering or something.
Maybe the wiki associated with that project. Maybe
there is probably, yeah. I mean, honestly, that you'll find it in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that will be an interesting topic to cover in Flutter Forward. I guess I don't know, like what are the improvements in there?
I found it. I think. Okay. Yes, it is called Impeller. I don't know why the search, like this is just GitHub search all over again.
Yeah.
Here it is. Here's the Impeller project board. I'll pop it in the chat, and there you go. What they're currently working on needs triage in progress, internals, Vulkan, OpenGL, display list, bugs. Yeah, you'll find it all on here. Impeller on Android. What they're working on, and so on and so forth. Right. So yeah, nothing. And this all came from the wiki article, which is where and I'll pop that in the chat as well. There's all your Impeller information. You can go dig it all out from there. Yeah, have fun. Again, I want to please be clarify that we don't work for Flutter. We don't work for Google. We don't work for the Flutter team or anything else. We're just community members.
Mm-hmm.
So we know as much as you do. With the upcoming Flutter version, what more advancements can we see in Flutter Mobile specifically? You'll know when we know. There you go. That's the end of that question. Sorry.
Yeah.
We already answered that earlier. Yeah. Right. Part one. Oh, we got a two-part question. All right. Part one. I'm developing an application that has two types of user. Suppose student and teacher. Support. Yeah, whatever. And student pays for teacher services. Okay. How should I manage their payments? Direct link for each teacher or some sort of inner wallet? Is there any service or so that an ideal system design of the wallet? Well, so here's the problem. Okay, hang on. What's the best way? You want to. The question here is how you're earning funds from this, because if you hold on to money, you then have to obey the financial rules for your country for where you have that account. This becomes a problem, and you don't want to do this. Okay, you're essentially becoming a financial institution at that point. You have to be very careful. This is like the same thing as like give an example of Uber, right? Uber, they take your funds and then they pay the drivers, right? But they hold on to those funds for a period, and what they want to do really, and the way they work it is the payment stays with the payment provider. And then a bit's taken off, kept and given to Uber, and the rest is given to the driver or however that kind of system works. But that's what you want to be doing. There are systems out there for this. What's it called? Stripe Connect is one that's popular. Stripe Connect offers. So Connect is. I'm going to bring it up on screen. There's lots of providers out there that offer this thing. Braintree is another one that offer a similar service. And the idea here is that you have your customers. Yeah, all these one things. You basically your customers on board and make Stripe accounts under your whatever it is your company is, and then you can actually choose how funds are transferred. So what Stripe account is being connected to and paid. So separate charges and transfers thing. I think this is the idea. So yeah, you can do all this kind of application fee amount. So what amount is the fee and what amount gets transferred to whom, where, and you can do this kind of thing: payouts, instant payouts, subscriptions. Annoyingly, like payments is one of those things that is just not simple. That Stripe is actually one of the better sort of APIs. There's lots of good APIs now, but it's inherently always been more difficult than it should be. There is an option. So, I mean, it all depends on how. I don't know how. It depends on how you want to do your payment system. Like,
Right.
You're gone. What you think?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on like the system, because maybe, I don't know, like the student could actually pay a subscription for having like different teachers, so you will be like having in a purchase, for example. I don't know, like it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. Like if it is like paying for a session, maybe like Stripe and paying like for the whole session would be nice, but you will have to see like, yeah, if you're like a middleware between the user and the teacher, the student and the teacher, and you hold the funds. But it really depends. I think like there are a lot of options, and like you can achieve that, but you really have to think like how you need to the system to work. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I would say, Amir, your first thing you should do is forget about the app completely. That's the first thing. Think about the architecture of what you're trying to achieve as a business, right? What you're actually trying to achieve, and then go looking for a solution for that. This is what the CTO's job is: to find the technology and find the appropriate services for something. But the find that kind of what solution fits best, right? And then go try out the API, correct? Complete test project, completely away from your application, nothing to do with your app, and see if you can achieve what you want to do completely outside of the application. Because you don't have to waste time integrating it into your current structure of stuff, right? You can just do something fresh. Like a little console app that can I communicate with the API? Will it transfer the files to the right test account to do my thing that I wanted to do, right? These are the kind of like things that you want to try. Once you've got that working, then you can go, okay, now I have a plan. You then diagram that plan, write it out, whatever you need to do to make it set in stone, and then you can go implement that in your actual application. And that's what I'd probably say you should do, because you're going to have to try a few amount. You're going to have to try a few different things out, a few different services and things, just to kind of get the right one for you, I'd say. There's a few of them. There's a name given to this type of service, and I can't remember. PayPal offer another payment model through their Braintree product, and I can't remember for the life of me how it's all supposed to work. But in general, you don't want to be. You have to look at your financial. I'm trying to find one for you, but you need to definitely look up what the regulatory requirements are in your country, or wherever you're hosting the server and everything else. You have to be careful about these things, because again, it all depends on which payment provider. So if you're using Stripe and Stripe supports your country, there might be financial regulatory requirements that Stripe asks you to obey for your country, right? It all gets really, really complicated. So do your research. You don't want to go down the route of implementing all this thing and then finding out it's all gone wrong and you have to redo it all, right?
Right.
All right.
Because it might be funny in terms of development, but then you realize it doesn't work, like from a legal point of view, right?
Yeah, and also, like, you know, when you're dealing with whenever you're dealing with finances or money in any way, test. Like, severely make sure your code is not going to break in some weird condition, right? You need to make sure you're covering all possibilities, because the last thing you want to do is be billing someone and not receiving the service, or worse, billing someone too much money. You got division in the wrong place. Suddenly it's 100 times what it should be, or 10 times what it should be, right? You need to make sure that everything's clear, everything is well tested. Yeah. All right, let's move on. Can I try this Karamat? That's probably terrible. Okay, sorry. How to use C++ code files in Flutter project? Does this work on Android and iOS? You can do that. So it's the same as if you were to do. So first of all, there's many ways of doing this, right? There's lots of different ways of approaching this. So I'll give you a direction into a couple. So one, Android already supports using native code, so does iOS. So you can just add that C++ code to iOS or Android, and then use what's called method channels to communicate to the native code to your Flutter program. And there's a section on the Flutter documentation. We should need to add this to the. We literally go to this every week. I think there's a question around this. So you go to flutter.dev. Let me share this. It's flutter.dev, and you click on documentation, and over here you've got platform integration, writing platform specific code, and here you go, blah blah blah. And essentially it's this sort of process of communication channel, and it all goes into it in here. You don't need me to show you, but yeah, there's lots of other articles on the internet around this. Now that allows you to sort of take advantage of the existing sort of infrastructure you might have around your Android and iOS project. The problem is, if you want to kind of keep, I prefer to keep my Android and iOS projects for my app pretty clean, because I want to recreate them when the new host stuff gets, let's say Flutter comes out a new version, and they've changed the way that this happened before with like Flutter embedding v2 for Android, but they've changed some structural thing, and I'd rather just like delete the folder and like recreate it, right? So it's sometimes nice just to create a separate module in your project, which is what's called a plugin, which does exactly the same thing, but it's just separate to your application code, separate native code. That's one approach. And truthfully, you can just also make just a directory inside your repository, add a CMake file, add your C++ code, and compile it as a shared object. This is like a dynamic link library, essentially. It's a DLL on Windows, .so on Linux, .dylib on Mac. These are just the outputs of a shared library where you compile C++ code. And you can use FFI just to open up the file and call functions in it. So again, it all depends on what your C++ code does, what it needs to interact with, how it works. But when it comes to FFI, I'm pretty sure that there's a whole section. I know there's documentation on it. Pretty sure I've seen it somewhere in the official stuff.
Yeah, I think there is. Yeah.
Well, here's an wrong button. Yeah, so I just, again, in platform integration, Android C interop, there's a talk here about FFI, foreign function interface, and about this. So basically, again, you do dynamic lib open. It talks about creating example here. Literally this, like creating a plugin that has native code, creating a CMake file, how you add that into your Android code so it compiles it for you, and then how you can open up that lib.so file and then call functions in it. This is probably exactly what you probably want. There's lots of ways of doing the FFI stuff, but yeah, hopefully that puts you in the right place. Yeah. Sorry, did you want to add anything, Gianfranco?
Yeah, no, I think there is a video on Dart FFI with C++. Just to cover the boilerplate needed, because it's like really tough to get to that point where you actually can connect Dart with C++. So it might be also useful.
There's Why do I think? Oh yeah, and there's also a package. I just recommend this right now. Hang on. And there's this package here. It's called FFI Gen. This can also help. You need to. There's a little bit of setup because you need to make sure you. In fact, it talks about down here installing LLVM. But what this will do is this will pass your header files from the C code and produce this Dart code to execute and run those functions, which is really, really handy. And there's lots and lots of configuration that you can add in FFI Gen. I guess they've moved it to FAQ. Oh no, it's down here. Oh, here you go. So here's an example. You can kind of do a type mapping and renaming and all sorts. And then, yeah, you can configure it so the Dart code on the output is exactly what you want for your project, which is really, really handy. But yeah, this is pretty detailed. But that's FFI Gen. And then, yeah, you're saying that there's is it a video?
Yeah, it's called C interoperability with Dart FFI, but it's like, I think it's plain C without.
Oh yeah. It's from. I know. This is from. Not
I think
this.
it was
Google.io. I found it. It's here. So
Yeah,
interoperability with Dart FFI. Right. All right. I'll pop that in the chat for you. There you go. Whoever was asking that question. Oh, there we are. Karamat. Right. Next question. How to make text widget selectable in Flutter Web. Use selectable text widget. There you go.
That was one of the updates, the recent updates, right?
It was in Flutter 3.3.3.5, I think. But yeah. So there's this new. So you can actually do. There's actually a trick to this. So this one's been around a long time. You can just use selectable text, but it always makes it selectable. There's actually another one which you can do selectable region, and selectable region is the new one. You can just wrap your entire screen or your entire page of content in a selectable region, and it turns all text widgets into being selectable. So this is how you do it, right? So I'll put that link in the chat for you as well. That's probably what you're looking for. It talks about how it works and so on. But yeah, selectable region. How to use in-app purchase iOS without other third-party plugin revenue card.
Yeah,
any complete guidelines. Without any third-party plugin. I mean, just go read the iOS documentation on how to integrate with in-app purchases and do it.
Yeah.
In your iOS folder, open it up in Xcode and integrate the way that if you don't want to use a third-party plugin. I don't assume you mean by revenue card. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's revenue cat, not card. It is a service to manage in a purchase. I mean, the whole point is to provide an interface. So not only like us as developers needs to re-implement the whole flow of the in-app purchase, but also I think it provides like different charts for stakeholders. So that's another benefit.
But he's saying that I see. Sorry, I answered the question. He's saying without third-party plugins like this one.
Without revenue cat, right?
Yeah. So the problem here is a lot. I mean, there's certain things that you want to do that are just inherently complicated that you're going to need a package for. And in-app purchase is one of those things. It's not straightforward. As much as it used to be straightforward, it's definitely not straightforward anymore. There is actually a package from the Flutter team. It brings up called in-app purchase, and this is the official package that exposes those APIs in a cross-platform way and tries to simplify it. But when you talk about, you might have your server react to it, and it's one thing to integrate into your app, but then you actually need to integrate with the rest of your product, and it can get complicated. But I would say just use this package, right? You don't need, as I said, you don't need a third-party service, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you want to like implement it in Flutter, I know like if you're talking about iOS, but recently I think they updated StoreKit. I know like if in-app purchases, the Flutter package is using StoreKit too, but those come with like a really nice update. And the way you interact with the in-app purchase objects, right? Then there are different types of objects, but I will strongly recommend to like include revenue cat because there are so many cases that you have to cover, and you never know, right? Like if something goes wrong, like that specific use case, you don't have it. So yeah, maybe if you, I mean, certainly with revenue cat, you will have to pay a commission, I think, but I think it pays off like the development hours that you need to like put
The, the
on
thing,
top.
the thing the thing I tell most people is use a service on your like if this is an app you're building, it's your first version of app. Use services, use other companies that get you to delivery faster.
Right.
Then when it's working and you're scaling, it's all working. You go, okay, I want to cut that revenue. I want to cut that loss of profit, and I'm going to do it myself. Then you can go re-implement it yourself and get rid of that third party, right? But you've only done it. You've done it at the right time when you actually need to. Because once you implement this, you might realize actually, I don't want to do in-app purchases. I want to use subscription. I want to change it in some fashion. And you've not wasted all your time implementing in-app purchases. Then, right? So, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, quickly, briefly, yeah. So I just looked, yeah, in-app purchase store kit. So using store kit here
Okay.
for iOS and macOS and shared. Let's have a quick look. Shared. Is that from here? It'd be from here. Shared. So this is for Mac. The pod spec doesn't particularly say it's using anything specific. So I guess that would be something that is importing. I don't know. I'm not going to go hunting right now, but yeah, I'm sure you can find it if you're interested.
Yeah.
All right, next question. How good is Dart as compared to other languages, JS, Golang, in terms of runtime, as this is important for backend dev? It's compiled to native machine code, so the same as Golang. And it's in that situation, you could say it's better than JS. I mean, as I said, JS on backend is very well optimized with their just-in-time compilers. So I think it's completely comparable. Yeah, I mean, you can do isolates, you can do the multi-messaging.
I know if Golang supports multi-threading, but yeah, I didn't test Golang, but yeah.
Golang's method of doing multi-thread, they're called Go routines and channels, and I think it's channels. It's been a while. It's very similar to isolates and messaging between isolates. It's definitely simplified, and it's because it's part of the language itself, and not like it's actually a part of the language and not like classes or objects inside the language, right? So there's a distinction there, but yeah, no, that's quite it's quite powerful on both. I think the question here is try out your use case and see what you want, but so far no problems I've seen. Yeah. Can you guide for image segmentation? Please share a list of packages use Google ML Kit, but that not giving perfect result for removing image background. I studied image matting in Python, not Flutter. I mean, just do the same thing. I'm not sure. I understand what basically this. I think this came from a few weeks ago. Previous questions around basically doing green screening, right? So using an image mat and like removing like a background from a screen. Anything you can do in Python, you could just rewrite in Dart. I mean, obviously, if you're using some libraries, then you're going to have to write them or write the bit of code from those libraries in Dart. The thing is, you're processing a lot of data, and no matter where you're doing that, even Python is going to be slow, right? Because you're talking about object level stuff. So again, you might want to just do what we just spoke about with FFI and just rewrite the portion of image manipulation of the actual frame data in C, and then you could then easily sort of remove the pixels and change their alpha channel, and then push them back. They just edit them. You can actually edit the memory in place, and then Flutter's going to be using with a transparent background, I guess, or you could replace the pixels from another image if it's the same size. Please share a list of packages use Google ML Kit, but it's not perfect. Not much else I can help you with there. Gianfranco, any ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I think that about ML Kit, I mean, we've used it, but in general, we try to use packages, right? I think like, in terms of machine learning, like probably Python is like the way to go because it's like really related. But yeah, I
mean,
feel I cannot think more. Like,
if this isn't green screening, like you're not just trying to color key and you're trying to use like machine learning to remove a background, then you can take your machine, you can train a model for removing backgrounds on your computer and output a TensorFlow Lite model, and then you can actually process the data using TF Lite package in Pub in Flutter, and that would probably do what you want. So there's TF Lite, TensorFlow Lite. So look, I think it's this one. There's a Flutter TF Lite as well. Pix to Pix, SSD. Yeah. So this is something like you supports image classification, object detection, Pix to Pix, Deep Lab, PoseNet, both iOS and Android. So I think the Pix to Pix is the one you want. But yes, you load your model, and then you can then process that model. You can run on image. There you go. Give it an image file, or you could probably just run on binary and then give it the actual binary data for the image. And then you get your output, and then you just render the pixels, whatever you want to try and do. Run on model and frame. Actually, that's exactly what you want here. Like run on image stream, so you can actually use the camera plugin with the image stream, which gives you one of these what's called a frame back with planes, and then this returns those planes to run model and frame. So there you go. You can run your TF Lite straight on the camera frame. So I'll pop that over in chat. There you go. Probably what you want. Omen says, "How do I cartoon style like map, like they do in Waze app? How do I cartoon style like map? I don't know what you mean by that. Do you mean like how do you just display a Google Map kind of thing?
maybe like different styles of the map, like in Waze. I know. Like,
I don't. I need to go look up.
I wonder if they're talking about how Waze does a lot of custom pins.
Oh, custom pins.
Cartoonish looking pins.
Yes, right. Yeah. It should be that.
So they have rather unusual pins for where there's a police car, where there's construction.
Well, I mean, just stick a pin in your Google Map. I mean, the Google Maps product, the Google Maps package, lets you define custom pins.
Right.
So
design like a custom pin first, and then just use that.
Yeah, I mean, there are ways, not pun not intended, and there are ways to make widgets that move with the map. So you can actually use a Flutter widget and place it on the map. It requires translating between the longitude, latitude, longitude coordinates of the screen, the region of the screen that you're looking at, versus where your coordinate is. Then working out where in pixel space that is. You're doing a coordinate space transformation between latitude and longitude to pixels on the screen. It's complicated, but you can do it. This is the Google Map package. I just posted it in the chat, and in here you can. It has if you're just trying to put custom pins, you just you can actually use a repaint boundary to capture a widget into a bitmap. I've done this before, actually with Google Maps, and then when you define your pins, markers. You can give it a bitmap descriptor for the icon, and a bitmap descriptor can be loaded from where is it? From an image asset or from bytes, and this is the raw image bytes, and it must be coded as PNG, and you can get those from a repaint boundary. So hopefully that puts you in the right direction. Yeah, I'll pop that in the chat as well. Dinesh, I'm planning to build a package similar to Angular Flex layout in Flutter. I'm wondering if I could use Layout Builder for this, or do you have any other recommendations? I don't know anything about Angular Flex layout.
Me neither. But
yeah, sorry.
But probably Layout Builder should work. I know how Flex layout in Angular is.
Yeah, I was gonna say the problem with Layout Builder is so Layout Builder has a very particular purpose, right? Layout Builder's purpose is to change the widgets, that is, rebuild the tree based on the layout of the parent widget. That's based on the constraints of the parent widget. That's probably not exactly what you're trying to do. What you probably want to do is just make your own layout algorithms. The widgets are there, but then you're just laying them out however you want to, and that requires what's called custom render objects. So I would go look. You might want to go look down that route. There's actually several talks at conferences. There's some official Flutter ones around render objects, and there's some really good community ones around render objects. There's also, I mean, we went through this before last week, I think, but I'll mention it again here, and that is there is in the API you'll find custom multi-child layout. Which is a widget that lets you lay out multiple children, and it's particularly just does the layout algorithm during layout, not build. Right, this is different to Layout Builder. Yeah, and this lets you essentially you give it a delegate, this Cascade delegate, for example, and then you can get and see here's a layout that this person's implemented in this function perform layout. Whatever this is, I won't go into it, but here's an example. There's also single child when you want to lay out one child within your bounds. There's maybe reasons to do that, but that might be a good first step to go to. But these don't solve all use cases. These are widgets, and a lot of the time you need to work on your render object. There's also a package called Boxy, which I know Randall's keen on. Boxy. I don't know why pub.dev always runs slow. Boxy and what? Is it 1x? And it's 1x. I thought it was 2x's. Yeah. And then this does layout algorithms and so on. So this would probably be here's Flex layouts. So is this the same as Angular Flex layout? Is this already a package that does what you want it to do? I don't know, but I would maybe look at the source code of this, and that might give you an idea about how you could do your own. Yeah, hopefully that puts you in the right direction.
But it's a good idea, like to try to bring packages from another technology to Flutter, because they already solved the problem, right? And you are like, yeah, getting advantage of that.
I did something ridiculous for a project. I decided to port a Z80 CPU, so an emulator for a CPU, from JavaScript to Dart. I did it in about 4 hours. It wasn't too bad actually, but oh my god, it's like a billion lines long. I don't know. It's ridiculous. Yeah, like you can port stuff, and it can be worth it though. So this image here, Dart implementation of the Zilog microprocessor. You won't find this useful unless you're working on a project that requires a Z80. But yeah, the ridiculous thing is like I don't remember the core. No, it was CPU. I don't even know how many. Yeah, 2,554 lines of just like,
wow,
just ridiculously heavy math that had to be conveyed. Luckily, I didn't have to write it from scratch, right? But to do all these operands and work out the CPU instructions is not a fun thing. But this is just lines and lines and lines of it.
Yeah, right.
All right, next question, I guess. Oh, Felix, for Gianfranco, what's currently your biggest pain point with using Dart on the server? Is there any particular you'd like to see improved? Or maybe a custom Dart frog enhancements here, especially for you?
Oh, okay, that's a nice question. I mean, I think one of the biggest pain points, but it's not like actually like a big thing, big deal would be like to auto-generate the HTTP client, right? Because you have to do that manually, and it can be really automated, right? Because you have like all the endpoints really defined. I know it's part of the roadmap, but I think like that would be like the biggest thing to solve right now. Because if you use, for example, gRPC, that is something that is auto-generated, and you have to take care of that. But yeah, yeah. Sorry.
No, I was going to say like OpenAPI does this, right? Like the OpenAPI was called Swagger, right? Like the OpenAPI standard. So maybe Dart Frog could output an OpenAPI specification file as part of its like code generation,
right?
And then that could then be used with current client generators to generate the client code.
Yeah, I think it's part of the roadmap. But yeah, I think like going back to the previous question, if like we use Dart on the server, it's like we are kind of analyzing like what would be the effort of start implementing everything with Dart and your own databases, like versus just using, for example, Firebase. I mean, there are different solutions, but in terms of time and efficiency, like how can we estimate the hours dedicated to like writing custom Dart code and like deploying to, I don't know, like Cloud Run and connecting with a database for the whole project, right? But yeah, probably we should invest more time on that.
I was doing. It reminds me because I did Dart on the server. One of my very first Dart on the server side projects. I decided to do gRPC and use the code generation there to generate. So we would declare the API services in the
protobuf, right?
Protobuf, in the protobuf format, and then we'd generate the server. So we'd have it generate a server interface that we implement in Dart, and then we'd also generate the client side code to connect to that. And it'd all be generated for us, which is actually quite a nice way of doing it. And the nice thing about the gRPC stuff, it allowed two-way communication as well. So
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, you can like communicate like bi-directional using streams, but I don't know, maybe like that would be. I mean, Dart Frog is incorporated in WebSockets, so in a way you can push messages like to the client, but maybe supporting gRPC somehow.
gRPC is okay, and I really do like the idea of like the binary protocol over the thing, but the problem is it needs to go over WebSockets. That is the problem. Like the gRPC. I don't know. I haven't looked at the gRPC web project for a long time, but it wasn't there when I was looking at it. It wasn't there yet. It was still into quite active development. But I think if you can do binary serialization of objects over a WebSocket, which you can, but if that was like the primary way of doing communication, you could do like a really nice sort of actual bidirectional communication with a client and start doing things like active layout, server-side rendering, some really nice advanced things. Yeah. Anyway, right. Next, I guess, if I want to create horizontal and vertical scroll bar in the same screen, then how I create it with great difficulty. Are you talking, Scott? Because you are muted. I hope you've not been talking.
I haven't
before
done that in how long? No, I just started talking. So this whole time I've been quiet, I reached back and grabbed a workshop that I did a couple of years ago and had to update the code. And then as soon as I finished, I realized I answered the wrong question. So I did not put I did not do this on how to do scroll bars. I did it on how to do multi-dimensional scrolling. So just for fun, yeah, as you can see, we have what I call the slot machine. So
I mean, you've got like, you can always like put one sort of scroll dimension inside another, and you can just put two scroll bar widgets. So a scroll bar widget you can give your scroll controller, and it will just render based on the the axis that's being scrolled. So I don't see a reason why you couldn't add two scroll bars.
and this
But the problem here
silliness
is
was
that
done with
I was just going to say, like the problem with using two scroll bars is that the content itself is not going to be panning, it's not going to be moving. So I think you need to you need to understand like what you're trying to actually achieve by scrolling in both directions. There's not many use cases for that. There is that there's a widget. What's the widget called? Interactive viewer. Yeah, the interactive viewer widget.
Read or no?
No, it's hang on, let's bring this up. There's interactive viewer that enables you to pan and zoom. What you can, I think you can like choose, but yeah, it's probably not the best example on a desktop, but yeah, you can like pan around. But I don't know if it even has an option for scroll bars. I mean, I don't see anything, but there's no reason, I can't see any reason why it wouldn't work. Or they call it a transform controller. Okay, so this modifies a matrix 4. That's cool. So yeah, you would need I mean, the thing is, I mean, I'm going to go back to this, right? Yeah, you've got the scroll bar widget. Chuck two scroll bars in, but if you look at how the scroll bar widget actually works, it just reads the scroll controller value, right? So the scroll bar, you give it a scroll controller, and it will read that value, and then draw a scroll bar, but you could just draw a rectangle yourself. I mean, it's not too difficult. You could even position a widget, in a different position, and therefore you've got a scroll bar, right? Yeah, I think it'd be nice to know what you're actually trying to achieve with your horizontal and vertical scrolling, but there's no reason why you couldn't just put a scroll bar around each of your different planes scrolling. I would like to know more. Next question. What's the best for preloading video in Flutter? So I'm kind of curious what you mean by preloading, because I mean, it's just download the video. As soon as the video is accessible to the local device, there's no like loading, right? Loading is buffering, right? I think in your case, because when you have a video locally, it's instantly there. So I think the key to what you're asking for here is how can you cache a video? In which case, you just download it to use the path provider package to find the local app directory or cache directory, download the files and save them, and then you can just play them from your local file. I mean, Gianfranco, yeah.
No, I'm trying to think if he's referring to, streaming the video instead of like download the whole video, and like if you're about to play that video, try to, preload.
Sadly, the current packages for video playback don't support this. That streaming essentially like start buffering a video and start streaming down. I know this is not a simple problem to solve, right? Like, ideally, what you would like to do is just say play video from network, and then it will start downloading it, start caching it, and then if you scroll around, it will actually cache that video. So if you go to play the video again, it's already got bits of the video, starts playing it immediately. Like, this is the ideal, and it's that bit that's missing. That sort of at the moment, that sort of cache layer and sort of preloading, I guess you can call it here. That sort of pre-downloading of the video content. Yeah, I don't think the video player plugin actually supports like streaming of a media raw byte stream or anything like that. So I don't think there's like a simple way of actually like asking it to play content that isn't just downloaded up front. So a quick look, why not? So here's the video player package, the official sort of one, video player controller. So you can play from asset, content URI, file, network. Yeah. So content URI is specific an Android thing. This allows you to play from other applications content that's provided directly to you. Asset obviously ship with your app, file on the local hard drive, so it's storage. So that would be, as I just said, if you download it, you can play back on a file, or you can play straight from network. I think the play from network, I think the bit that's missing that probably needs to go into the video player package, if anything, is as we just said, like a way of preloading this. So there should be like a preload function on this controller, or start to pre-cache it or something, and then start downloading it. The problem here is it's not as simple as this, because this URL is passed directly to the media playback facilities of the platform, and they don't offer that functionality. So it's like you have to put a whole layer in for that. Essentially, what you're doing, as I just said in Flutter, you have to download it, but then as you're downloading, you have to stream and pipe it to the media decoder to actually play it back. It's not a straightforward process. Like most things with AV, it's difficult. And I mean, video is just a difficult topic when you want to do like the non-trivial sort of play video, right? As soon as you get into anything, streaming video, streaming anything audio and video is complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I'd say about that. Here's the best thing: if you feel like you're confident, do a PR on the video, modify the video player package, and do a PR. There you go.
Yep.
Or anyone watching, if you feel like you can help out DT here, you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
People keep saying that it's not exactly what they want. Well, it's open source.
Yeah.
Change it.
Contribute.
Yep. Okay, next. Have you tried playing with Chat GPT?
Yeah.
GPT.
Funny you should mention that.
All right, go to like 2 shows ago. We did a whole bit on it.
I was just I was just writing some code at work via ChatGPT. No.
Go on.
Simon's the one who does my PRs. Anyway, if you look at this, show me a Flutter widget class that has 4 doors, a bool to show if the engine is running or not, and a color, one for a car. And it says, here is an example of exactly what you're looking for. It even made it stateful so that we can change the whether or not the engine is running. Now, note, this is all based on information that it had as of 2021. So the @ is going to be in front of required. You might have to update the code slightly.
I'm also disappointed. It didn't put the constructor first. It didn't put the constructor first. Not obeying the Dart standard guidelines.
That's true. Like half the developers I know. But then it explains how to use it. It gives an example of how to use it. I mean, this is going to create a new standard for documentation.
I think there's like let me bring the question back up here. Yeah, it's this whole thing about ChatGPT. The problem I think that everyone's realized is it can be wrong, and the way it answers you is just confidently wrong, right? So it can say, this is the way you should do this, but the way it's suggesting is wrong, right? So it doesn't come back with, I think this is the way it should be done, right? Or I think I'm right. You know, like it would, like, it's a conversation, sure. And I think, like for most things, you can't just take it for its word. It's generated code, you know, it's generated as such. So you're always going to need to run it. You're always going to need to try stuff. But yeah, if you feel like you want to generate some code, go for it.
Now, here's the thing. We should have a contest between ChatGPT and BuildRunner.
Well, I tell you what, BuildRunner will be quicker. Right, at the moment at least. Anyway.
You might add a GitHub Copilot to that as well.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
It would be really funny is if you could like wire up GitHub Copilot and ChatGPT so that the suggestion from one bounces to the other, and the other one updates it and bounces back. So you kind of get this like infinite loop. Anyway, right. Next question.
All right. How do we handle
Oh,
redirections in web? For example, directing to a payment link and redirecting back with some response. Used HTML open window, but it wasn't compiling for mobile.
you can use HTML open window for mobile.
Yeah.
Obviously, what you need to do is detect if it's in web, and if it's in web, there's a k is web, which is a global constant, so that's true when you're compiling on web, and you don't use the HTML code for doing that. There's a package called universal_HTML, which nicely makes it so that if you try and call that open window function on mobile, it just does nothing, just doesn't work, and that way.
Mm-hmm.
You can compile your code for both mobile and Android. But the way you actually do this is with conditional imports, and that's the official way to solve this. And there's a whole section on I think there's a whole section on the Dart documentation for conditional imports. I'll find it. Well, I found an article on our wiki page about it. Sorry, on our Medium about it. So that's nice. Yeah. I'll share this with everyone. So this is the article: conditional imports across Flutter and web, which is exactly what you're asking about. And there's a big example here, but basically you can do this. Here's a bit of code you've probably never seen. Import this file if .io package exists, which means it's compiled for your computer. Or you can do like library.html for the web one, then include this other one instead of something.dart. And this allows you basically make 3 Dart files, one with your abstract interface like this, as shown here, a stub, and then you make your IO one or your JS one and your web one or whatever it is, and then it can do the specifics for that platform. So
okay. Also, folks, we need to kill the questions. We're really only supposed to be here for an hour and a half at most. We're gonna be past 2 by the time we finish just the ones we've got. We've still got 4 more. All right. And another interesting point there, I was wondering about that last question. Is this a case of trying to bite off too much in Flutter Web instead of just using it for a web app? Because once again, we have had the question. Well, okay, and at least to this SEO, I had a call with a number of people, including Kevin Moore, just last week. And I brought this up to him. I said, can we get something put in the docs that says use web for web apps, not for entire websites? And I pointed out that we get asked this 3 times a show, every week for over a year. He said he was going to do something that I would keep my
eyes on. I've actually got something. So Tim told me, this is the soundbite from Tim. This is Tim's own words.
It's from Tim. Okay.
We focus on use cases that can and should be expressed in a canvas. We prefer a WebGL canvas, but even what we refer to as HTML render only emulates Flutter's canvas capabilities, e.g. layers. Mm-hmm. It's not like for building websites, basically. It's for building web apps.
And what Kevin told me was he might put together a little video clip that whenever people ask that question, we can just play the clip instead of trying to answer it again and again.
Every week, without fail, we have that every week. Right. Let's get to these final few questions. Welcome back.
It's great. Speaking of a special video, you know what? We can make a collection of short videos that we just keep hitting the button. Mm-hmm. And play the video every once in a while.
We could probably, if we to do the show in 2 parts, we could have like a little video that we play at the beginning or maybe in the middle that just explains it, right? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's part of the fun, like having to understand how to ask questions. So.
Well, and it's funny too. For anybody who speaks, a friend of mine once said, "Remember, it's not the same dumb person asking you the same dumb question for the 5,000th time. It's the 5,000th smart person asking you the same reasonable question for their very first time, which is why I don't run away screaming when I see that question every time.
It's
All
very hard though. Like every Flutter conference I've been to is like that relates in any way to Android. It's like, oh, why could they just use Kotlin? It's like the amount of times I've answered this question, and it just it pulls at you after a while. But you know they're asking a reasonable question because they don't understand, right? And that's why they're asking.
Yeah.
So, can ML/AI be integrated into Flutter? We just spoke about TF Lite. There's the Google ML packages. Yeah, ML kit. There's a bunch. If you scroll down, actually, Scott, there's I think a table. If there's a table, there you go. So you got the barcode scanning, face detection, image labeling, object detection and tracking, text recognition version 1.2, digital link recognition, pose detection, selfie segmentation. I don't know what that is, but yeah, and natural languages. There's a bunch of stuff. These there is also a set of APIs that there's also a set of APIs for for Cloud Vision and things like that. So you try when you're doing ML on mobile. So that obviously Flutter covers lots of different platforms now. But if you're specifically talking about mobile, you want to do it on device, right? So a lot of the more recent mobile phones now have chips that are capable of doing machine learning on device and running these models on device very efficiently. So that's where the packages like the TF Lite package and those Google ML Kit packages come in because they try and do it on device. However, you can always do APIs. You can always start your own service using Python or whatever other fun AI stuff you want to do your AI on the server side. Or you can use Google's APIs like Vision APIs and things to do it on the server side and not ship it as part of your app. So there's lots of options. But yeah, you can certainly do ML and AI in Flutter. Nothing stops you from doing whatever you want in Flutter. All right, next question, Callan. I wouldn't waste a precious question on this, but I did wonder why Dart Frog name. I love it though. I think the perfect person in the chat is to answer this, and he probably has already answered, and that's Felix, because I have no idea. So
I think, I have no idea either. I mean, I think I heard the why, but I don't remember right now.
No. All right, next question. Ryan, why working... I'm just going to mute you, Scott. I don't know why. There's like an echo there. Why, when working with flavors, is there a way to define an index.html file for a specific flavor in VS Code launch.json? We are currently CP over main index when changing. We copy over the index file when changing dev state in production. Interesting. I've had this problem before in doing flavors on web. The question is, what are you putting in your HTML file that is specific for your environment? If it's your Firebase configuration, well, you don't have to put it in there anymore, right? If it's stuff like that, if it's like your API keys and so on, do it in code. Your Dart code can generate your script tags and can modify the DOM on the page at runtime. That avoids the need to have like hard-coded HTML files at all. Your HTML file ends up just being like a placeholder for that future content. Obviously, you want to edit metadata or something else. This is a different problem. I think copying over the main HTML file is a very reasonable way of doing that. You can even do that as part of your CI environment for delivering on your product. There's also, I also mentioned that you could actually have you can do multiple modules for each of your, like, as in Flutter web modules inside your monorepo, whatever, inside your repository. One for dev, one for stage, and one for production. Each of them have their own index, and all they do is their main Dart file just loads a common library, your entire app would be in a separate module then, and it could just load the entire app. And that way you just build each one of your projects depending on which environment. That's a completely, and then you don't have to do any copying, right? But now you've got 3 projects to maintain, like maybe 3 sort of headless projects to maintain. But they've all come with their problems. There's no specific way of doing this. You can. It's kind of interesting because I know you can build. I don't know about Flutter Web. Actually, let's have a look. I'm kind of curious. So when you build Dart web code, you can specify what the HTML entry point is, and that lets you override. So you can actually like build your code with multiple different index files for each different environment. Very similar to like the way you do Flutter run, and you can give it a different target. I don't know if that gets passed across the web dev environment. If it doesn't, this is, I think, a good option to add to the Flutter tooling. Actually, I think you found a really good use case here. Let me have a quick look. Flutter build web. I don't think it lets you. Base href, Dart.js optimizations, web renderer, profile release, Dart define. Oh, well, there's something else you can do. You can always do a Dart define as part of your build process, right? And then you can, with your flavor. You can also just specify the target of a different main.dart file it would do normally, and you can specify one for dev, one for stage, one for production, which is what I would normally do. Doesn't change the HTML file, but as I said, you can modify that in your Dart code. Yeah, so when you compile with web dev, my web, it's all out of date. Web dev. My entire thing's broken right now. I get it to come back, upload, activate. Everything's broken. Look at me. Right. Well, hopefully that helps you put you on the right road. Next question, I guess. We got lads, the last 2. Rutvik,
yes.
If I play audio, wow, your mic is really hot now. Quite loud. You weren't using that microphone just a minute ago. I'd ask me what happened. If I play audio in app and can play in background as it's, if I can play audio in app and play in background as it's running on single thread, if I open the app again, it continues from where it left, or restart. Okay, you hadn't actually asked a question here. You're asking, can you play in the background? I think that's what you're trying to say. So it doesn't matter about, so first of all, forget about single threading. That's immaterial, right? So audio is played by the operating system. Like that's what controls the audio playback. So that's how it runs in the background. So you can continue changing your UI and your audio continues playing in the background, right? And if you wanted to continue and to carry on, if you open the app, would it continue from where it left off or restart? Or you can just save the playback position. I guess, like, are you saying you want to stop it when your app closes and then just record the playback position? So as you get updates from your audio playback package, whatever one you're using, record the position, save it to shared preferences or to a JSON file or something. And then when your app starts up again, you read that. There's also state restoration, which is built into Flutter, and you can use that as well. There's more about UI state, but I don't see why you could save this there. And that's meant for like temporary restoration, not for persistent restoration. But yeah, like it's the same as if you had like an audio playing like audiobook library, right? You might leave one audiobook, come back and say, do you want to continue where you left off? Yes, I do. And the way they work is they just record the position, and when you come back, they go, oh, I've got a position saved. And it asks the user, do you want to continue? Yes, and then it just skips to that position and does play.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, yeah, all this audio stuff is down to the package you're using and the stuff to do anything in terms of background playback and everything. None of it's straightforward. It all depends on the package. So there's plenty of audio player packages out there. Like video, audio is pain. It's funny, right? I remember times when UI was the pain. Like I remember times when just doing complicated animations and stuff with UI was a problem. Now Flutter solved that. Like for me, like Flutter, like that's no longer a problem. It's all the stuff around that. It's still difficult, right? Like you do always fantastic UIs, you can do your networking, you can do all this kind of stuff. But yeah, doing audio and video is always a problem.
Testing 1, 2. Testing.
That's loud. Move the mic
I'm
away.
turned down to 30%.
Just move the mic away.
I didn't. Testing 1, 2. I
That's
didn't change anything.
I don't know. Something's changing the volume. Anyway. Right. Whiskey Peak, have you had a look at the new WASM compilation target for web now that it's available in the master channel? Nope. Have you?
I think it was added like really this week, right? I don't know, like,
Yeah.
but I haven't taken a look.
Now, why have
It's
we
definitely
not
interesting.
There are 2 words why we all haven't done that. Client deadlines.
Right. We're all very busy working.
Yeah.
Well, and a lot of people don't realize. I mean, we did a lot of this community work for years. We were partially trying to help build Flutter, and we were also hoping to get work. Right. So we weren't putting in the kind of work hours that we are now. And now all of a sudden we're putting in all these work hours and we're doing the community stuff. And it's like people say, have you seen this in Master? It's like, do you know the last time I had a moment to look at Master?
I don't get to work on Master anymore.
Man. Oh, my
I know,
God.
that's a good thing or a
we
bad
made
thing.
it through?
Yeah, that's it. That's small.
Nice.
Great.
And we're only an hour late. Cool.
Late by whose standards, though? I mean,
Yeah.
I think of the show as 2 hours because that's how we started it, and you just keep pushing it back to an hour. But that's because you're busier now.
I have 2 hours to finish a project for a client deadline. I should have had 50% more time.
Yeah, sure.
We've been
Yeah,
saying
well,
for
there's-
months that we're going to try and get it down to an hour.
Midnight to 2 a.m. I'm sure is still open in your schedule.
There's a reason I have a relationship and you don't.
Yeah, by choice. By choice. Yes. Right.
All right then.
All right.
Right.
Okay, it was nice to be here.
Yeah. Thanks for
Anytime,
stopping by
buddy.
there, Jen.
Thank you for
A
coming.
lot of
Cool.
a lot of questions. I mean, there is even question that we didn't ask, but we didn't answer. Sorry, but yeah, it was really fun. Hope you have a nice holidays, and yeah, hope to see you in the show again.
And the
Happy
only other thing I
solstice.
want to point out real quick is the Pixel Watch Band matches the Flutter shirt.
Ooh.
Dear. Right.
Yes,
Well,
happy
thank you very much.
solstice, Yuletide cheer. Remember, Yule
Festivus.
is the one with the alcohol and the
Festivus
mistletoe
for the
and
rest of
Yule.
us. Yes.
Do we want to
All right.
stick around? Randall, are you going to stick around?
For
Or do you want
what?
to head off?
I
We
gotta
did talk about doing some live coding. I'm not sure if we should then. We've
Oh,
run over quite a lot.
I'll stick around for a few minutes. I got an open
I'm
schedule.
going to stick around for about half an hour. So,
Save
Uh,
that
well,
We'll
stuff.
I'll
come
see
on
us-
here and kick you back off in half an hour then because I have
See-
PRs that
see-
you need to look at.
Yeah.
see you soon. All right.
Okay, see you guys. Bye.
Ciao.
So I'll just break into a rendition of Chiron Beta Prime now while we're waiting for
Oh, dear.
Scott
Oh, dear.
or for Simon to get his stuff all set up.
Yes.
So what are we doing today, Simon? What are you going to live code as?
Well, we were talking about I was talking about some responsive layout stuff. I'm sure someone had a question at the beginning of the show.
Trying to remember. Well, there was a responsive layout just in general question because people always ask that. There was it was one that I actually answered as I usually do in chat because it's like
I'm gonna see if I can-
everybody's always. All right.
Oh, I mean, Masky was asking about the word processor stuff, but that's a more
Oh
complicated
yeah,
question.
that's a lot
There
to
was
show.
another one. That was it. Provider of. What was that provider of thing? That was it.
Right. Using
let me show that one.
Stuff.
Yeah, there we go. That's it. That's the one. I found it.
There's a fun one.
So let me see if I can get this working.
And you've made the appropriate tribute to the demo guides, I'm sure.
Right.
Okay.
Let's see now. We're going to do desktop, I guess. So I want to walk through some examples of some code here.
Sure.
Let's see if I can get this working. Bear with. So I'm going to go terribly wrong or terribly right. We'll find out.
It'll either be spectacular or spectacularly a crash.
Right. It's compiling.
Up in flames or down in flames, we'll see.
How's it mixes?
Yeah. Either way, it's in flames.
Well, I'm going to show the mixing thing in just a second if we can get this building, because I've got some examples here.
Cool. Cool.
Here we go.
The sun is out of my eyes again, finally. It would take winter solstice to put the sun right in my eyes for this show.
I mean, the thing is, this is the time of year, right? You go driving anywhere, it's like the sun's always in your eyes. Northern Hemisphere.
This is a horrible day to be in Phoenix. All the major streets in Phoenix are set out on a 1 mile grid that is perfectly north, south, east, west.
Is that what's they call it? No, hang on. Manhattan Henge.
Manhattan Henge, but that's not at the right angle for today. But yeah, there is a day when that happens. It's spring and fall time when all the things line up with the streets of Manhattan. But this is the bad day in Phoenix because all the lights, traffic lights, are sort of right at that altitude, right where you're going to be facing the sun. So, like if you're heading west in the morning, or west in the afternoon, or east in the morning, it's a pain in Phoenix today. Sorry, guys, they're in Phoenix. It's just the way you are. You laid out those crazy streets that way. I remember. I worked there for 6 months, so I know what it was like.
We're not answering any more questions this week. So if you have any questions, come back next week. But we're going to do some examples. So hopefully,
166 hours.
So I'll post this up. But this is a quick example of responsive layout stuff. So what I've done here is a lot of people. I made this like layout switcher here, but a lot of people. This example here is we have a mobile flag. If it's mobile, it returns the child, as seen here. And when it's not mobile, we get a little red box, which is our like side navigation, for example, right? And this just makes that kind of like jump between the two. We could animate that. There's nothing stopping us from animating that. But right now, we just return back one widget or the other widget tree. Now, a lot of people, you can do this, right? Now, if I just made this a builder, for example. I can do this. Let's just pop the placeholder here and here, because I'm just going to solve this little error that it's having. This and this. Right. And then we need to make the determination of if it's mobile or not. And we can do that if we want to. So what I was doing, and I'll show you this code in a second, and why it's important. If I pop this in here, it's media query.of context.
Media query. Ooh. All right. We'll just ignore that.
So this is what you don't want to do.
Right. Okay, good.
So the point here is that this will do exactly the same job, right? So I've just hot restarted it. It works exactly the same way. The problem here is as my window changes its size, this is particularly important on desktop and web. This is going to registers this widget, the builder, to rebuild, right? Because it's the context. And we make this condition, which means we now rebuild the entirety of this UI tree, potentially for every rebuild, right? Now it's the build. It just calls the constructors again. It doesn't necessarily mean that it redoes the elements of the tree and so on. It only does that when it changes. Right. But this is all expense you just don't need, especially if this is a very deep tree. So one way you can do this, obviously, is to pull this up, and then you could just like build my child here or something, and then like repurpose it in some fashion. In this case, my placeholder is in place of a child, right? So I could have like my sort of make up some child some widget, sorry, and then that would be put in place down here wherever I want it. And yeah, we should get essentially that's yeah, basically we this might be a whole entire subtree, this widget, this placeholder, which could be really expensive. And now we're constructing it once here, and we're reusing that existing widget when switching between these things. And then what you want to do is ensure that it's keyed. And what this means is that if the child is keyed, it will be reparented. So it will be detached from the hierarchy and reattached here. And we can actually see that in action if we want to. But a nice little widget that I've just made, and this is I just literally did this on a whim. I just threw it together, and this is just an example here, layout switcher. So you get a callback that tells you is it mobile or not with the widget's binding observer, and then it registers and unregisters. And when the metrics change, we get the current media query from the window. And if the flag has changed, then we set the new flag. And then this will recall the builder again with the new flag. So this is a way of just calling the builder method. So it returns back to how I had it. You can put print again, and I still think you can put print statements in your builders, right? And say like build called on whatever the widget is, right? And
yeah,
you can see how often. How there's also the Flutter performance has is it Flutter performance? I thought it was, yeah, rebuild stats, track widget rebuilds. And if you enable that, you'll get these. So if I now resize this, it should show what's actually being rebuilt here. And the decorated box is being built, but nothing else, because a decorated box is what's being built during this builder, right? But the whole child is not. And that's the key there, right? So, yeah. There's circles here, but it doesn't tell me. Oh, there you go. Look, it tells you how many from the current screen and so on. But yeah, you could, obviously, I could put that in a widget, whatever. But the point here is when it changes between compressed and normal, what it's not doing is it's not the layout switcher is the only thing that rebuilds. It's not rebuilding the entire child. So this white box being the child doesn't get rebuilt. But there's a bunch of this kind of stuff. So this is I'll get a gist link for everyone. If anyone wants this. Chat. Any questions? Didn't see any questions.
No, not on this.
So yeah, so this is like some responsive design stuff. There's also, I think, I'll leave that one. That's fine. So someone was asking about the whole sort of pattern of using mixins for your UI. So let's do an example of that, shall we? Let's hit.
Cool. Let's do it.
Run the wrong one. That'd be helpful. And go quiz responsive too. Just use this demonstration. So this is the actual question that's displayed on the screen. Provider of, how do we do this, right? So I'm going to let this build, and then I'll show you an example of this. So what we're going to do. Okay, so we have our. Ignore that. Right, so we have our little stack of widgets here, wherever they are, and each one of these, actually, I have you connect spacing. That might make it nicer, right? Spacing. And this is just like a little. This again. It's a wrap widget, and this shows you how you can make stuff responsive. Most people don't even realize this exists. Very simple. You don't have to have equal number of widgets. It doesn't have to be like a grid view, and you can define the size of any child. Each of these children could be a different size if you want to, right? They don't have to all be the same size. So yeah, there's some really interesting widgets in the framework to help you deal with the
this is great when you have a bunch of chips that are all different width because they're like text on them.
I mean, there's a lot of,
and they basically merge all those together. Yeah,
there's a lot of use cases for this. Yep. I think sorry, someone just asked about the child key. The point of having the child key here is that when we attach this child down here gets attached. I mean, I was just printing off this to show the build of the child, right? You don't actually need a builder. You just need to make sure the child widget itself is built. So that could be a placeholder. And as long as you've got a key on your subtree, as long as you've got a key on your subtree, when it's detached from this location, the hierarchy, and reattached here further up, it will reuse the same state. You won't lose your state of your widget. You won't lose your render object. You won't lose your elements. They will get maintained automatically for you. That's the whole point of using a global key, to be fair. You'll get in your stateful widgets, they're inside that part of the layout. You'll see that you get a activate and deactivate. And these methods are called when you're removed from the tree and then you're reattached to the tree in a new position. And then you can then go and do your sort of context of and find stuff based on your new hierarchical position. But yeah, if you're missing that, they're quite handy. But yeah, so that's the case for the thing. Yeah. Back to here. So provider of. Let's make something useful here. So what I'm going to do quickly here is scaffold around action button. Just trying to set something up here.
Can you make your text one step bigger, just because?
It's
a little better that way. Yeah. It was just very tiny for me.
All right, so floating action button. And let's put the icons. Go golf. I don't know. Let's do that. Doesn't really
golf course.
Sure, why not?
A sharp golf course. Share golf course. Sharp.
Sharp.
I don't know what that would be.
I think that's just the sharp edges.
Oh, okay.
There's a modification to it. Right, so we have this button down here that does absolutely nothing right now. Let's bring this over here. I want to make this slightly, say, 280. There we go.
Cool.
So, and the reason why that's not centered anymore is because body on a scaffold does not imply any constraints. So you need to wrap it with a size box.expand. If you ever have that problem with a scaffold explicitly, that's how you fix it. And look, we get our constraints properly managed then. So I did actually kick the size up, James, to quite a bit. I thought that, and I did check it in the stream. So check you're on 1080p because you kind of need like a decent font size. But yeah, when it gets so big that it's really hard to manage. So
right.
Anyway, so what we're going to do here is, let's say we have a class and we're going to call it magic number, because I can't think of any better. I'm going to say it extends a change notifier, and this is going to have a magic number in it because why not? And it's going to start off with a magical value of 42. In fact, I'm going to make that private. And this could be a value notifier, right? I'm just saying that now, right? This is an expanded, just a use case here just to show this working, right? So now we can say set magic number. This is like a backend of your application, right? This could be like sending data to the server. You could not have setters, you could have functions. There's all sorts of things you can do here, right? But the point here is this is kind of a conflated example, right? Anyway, so we set our magic variable. This is just, again, you can test this separately. This is your backend of your app. And once we've got out, we want to tell the UI that something's changed. You use your notify listeners, and then we'll get a. We can even do something more than this. So we can add a int get magic number. Now the reason for overriding the getter and the setter for this is that we've basically said if you try to set this magic number value, it will notify all the listeners of the change notifier that the value's been set. And then we can also add more variables in here, and then they all get notified whenever anything to do with this magic number class gets set. So this is your conflated backend, however you want to distribute your data changes. Okay, so we need to create an instance of that. Our app starts up. Maybe we want to do something asynchronous. I don't know. And then we're going to say our home screen requires this magic number instance. Now I am actually, John, I'm not going to do home screen. I'm going to add another class here. I want to call it magic app. Just because I want to show you the top level how it would actually be. You definitely don't want that in there. So we're going to pass over we're going to say we want a const magic app, and that requires a magic number. Okay, so that's going to pass over to magic app. It can't be constant, obviously. Right. And then when our app starts up, it's going to also then pass that over to the home screen. And then the home screen can use it, right? So this is a standard sort of way you might sort of do sort of. This is not the way to do things. Just to send that now. But this is one way you can do this, right? This is passing it down the tree, right? Now this means that every one of your widgets suddenly has to start having all this variable added to them, which is just right, especially when you use composition and you want to hand these variables down. So now suddenly in here in my button, I could say magic widget.magic magic number plus equals plus, right? That will call the getter, increase the value, and call the setter for us, right? And then each of our widgets down here, each of our items, we're gonna wrap this in a stack, and then have a text widget on top that contains our magic number. I'm going to hard code 56, just put the number there for the screen, and we're going to have style. Why am I getting a red box? Const, yes.
If only there was something to make it automatically unconst, like there is making it automatically const. That would be cool.
I think you could probably run Dart fix, right? I don't know.
No, the Dart fix only does consting. It doesn't do unconsting. It only complains about unconsting.
Yeah.
That's because it actually changes semantics when you unconst something, and it can't do it automatically because it needs a human involved.
It knows what's inside is no longer const, right? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, but
Right.
you know, there are issues in automatically unconsting things. Yes.
Right. Okay. Have we got rid of all our non-const? Right. I think that's all the errors. Let's for hot restart. See what we got. Okay. So we have a number in each one. That's a good start, and it looks visible, so that's good. Stick it in the middle, and it's going to play back constantly. Don't worry about it for now. Right. So I could obviously take my magic button, and when I tap this, it's going to be updating. But like, we want all the widgets, let's say, to access that data and display the number. Obviously, this is confounded. This could be all sorts of other things. So what we want to do is not pass it on, but we want to look it up. So to do that, we can use provider or Riverpod or name your whatever, right? But provider is a good example of this. So inside our app level, the top level, we're going to wrap this in a that's actually a thing called a multi-provider, which I would normally do because I would have multiple of them. So I'm just going to do that here. I don't know if I even have provider in this project. I do. Good. And then the provider we're going to have is going to be a change notify provider. And it's going to, we've already got the value, so we don't need to create the value. And it's going to be the magic variable. Right? And what we can also do is just fix the type if we want to, just to ensure that you can't pass anything other than a magic number in this case, right? So this is fine. This is great. But now when we want to use the magic number in our widget, we would need to do so now in our widget, to use that magic number, we need to go look it up. And this is what you normally do. You say context. And then over here on the number, we can then say, I just delete everything. Right, magic dot. Magic dot magic number string. Now, if I restart, there's our lovely 42. Hit the button, they all get rebuilt and with a new number. Right, this is a conflated counter example. Right now. The problem here is there's probably lots of places in the app where we want to access magic number or repository or service or whatever. And rather than doing this is fine. It works. It listens automatically, but then it kind of makes it kind of difficult because if you want to, you end up putting this line everywhere. And if you want to change away from provider, it becomes difficult. So what I would probably do in this case is you can make a mix-in and say mix in magic number accessor, whatever you would call it, on state of type T for now. Pass in that type and then T extends widget. It's right, stateful widget. So this constraint matches the one for the state widget itself, or expects. Now inside of our mixin, we can now have a variable that holds magic number as a class. So we say magic number, right? And then when the widget starts up, it did change dependencies because that's if we want to listen to something, we can then go get this magic number variable, right? Now, if we do this, and then we'll call a getter for it as well. Magic. Right. So what we've now done is we made a quick mix in. That means whatever widget, stateful widget adds magic number accessor to it, will magically, pun not intended, will magically get the I should probably say something different there, but we'll get the magic number accessor here. Now, what we can we can extend this to, we'll make this late. Now, if I go and just implement this on here, say with magic number accessor, now magic number is still valid, but magic itself is coming from the mixin. And this is just a nice way to abstract out those cases inside your stateful and stateful widgets to sort of access whatever the content is. Yeah, there's nothing in here that it all works as expected. You can do this multiple different ways. Like if you don't want to listen, you just want to get access to the content, you can say listen false. Here's listen. Yeah, listen false. And then you could put this in a init state. And the one nice thing about doing this is then you can use, in this case, the magic getter during an init state. So you can actually do this twice. You can actually do the did change dependencies as well. And then essentially what you're doing is you're saying you get up front the value just so that it can be used in its state, and then you can then listen to the value during your normal access of your widget. Right? There's a ton of different ways. Now, if I go into here, my init state method, I can now use print magic is
cool.
And it just gets rid of the whole sort of restart. The magic is 42. Got printed out. I don't know this null check is for something completely different, so don't worry about that. But yeah, so this just nicely abstracts away that kind of, the just nice, makes a nice clean widget. You have nice clean sort of getters for whatever your state is coming from, but the whole state management piece is hidden behind the mixin. I've been doing this for years. There's lots of ways you can structure mixin, obviously, and however you want to do that. You could actually have like a whole set in here and make one mixin called Backend Accessor that provides a whole interface of getting content, right? It doesn't change. All you're doing is so again, the actual logic of your application doesn't change. You're still calling provider of, you're still calling your or Riverpod or whatever it is, you're still calling all those same functions. What you're doing is you're doing single responsibility principle here. You're just making all that stuff that deals with that portion of going the hierarchy or using your state management to get that content and moving it into its own little mixes, own little class, essentially, right? And then obscures that away. It also means that now you don't have to repeat yourself. Now you're following the drive principle, and you're not repeating this code all across your application. You've done it in one place. And if you want to update the way you access this content, just say, I want to use Riverpod now. I can now just edit this code to use Riverpod. And all I need to do is update this getter and make sure that it returns back the one from Riverpod. Suddenly, I'm now using Riverpod going from provider, or choose any other state sort of management thing, right? Yeah, there's lots of ways of doing this. So, oh, well, you're welcome. Yeah, gone on. That's actually something I always get better at. It seems that this way is. Yeah, thanks very much. You're more than welcome. Hopefully, this kind of like explains that a little bit better, that whole sort of provider of mixing kind of a notion. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I know this is like a conflated example here, right? Obviously, given this, you can also, to be clear, I didn't really show you. So here, look, I can now take this mix in, pop it on my home screen as well. And then I don't have to pass in the widget to my home screen. So I can access it directly to do the plus, right? That's the power of this, right? Suddenly, I don't have to put my widget around. It all continues to work as expected. Oh, it says, but it did build because I'm passing over a parameter I don't need. That can be const now. Yay. Right. Right, restart. There you go. So, So, I think that's the performance checking, which would be most turn off. That's of course issue. So, yeah, that was causing that. I'll check something in the framework. So yeah, so I basically use the provider to provide it to the rest of the app. And again, I could even put this multi-provider upper level around my entire app here if I wanted to, and not have it. I feel like it's self-contained because I want that the app level is what's providing these things. But you know, you could just move this widget upper level if you wanted to, and you wouldn't have to pass it into your app either. Then, right? Like nothing's stopping you from doing these things. Yeah, does that help? Hopefully that kind of makes a clear explanation. Was there anything else we were going to talk about? Responsive layouts, this. I feel like there was something else.
Somebody asked about the record stuff, but we've already done that in a previous episode here. And nothing new has really changed that's going to make the demonstration you did a couple weeks ago any better, because it's not that advanced yet in the releases. It's slowly getting there, one commit at a time.
Yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there. Is Matthew around still? I think maybe Matthew Jones.
Oh no, he bailed. He bailed. I think.
He bailed, did he? All right, well then, now we don't get to answer that. So I guess we'll be answering more questions. If you want a code example, or you're interested in something, make sure you tweet hashtag Humpday Q&A and at me, Randall, and Scott. One of us will find it, I'm sure. And or reach out on Mastodon. We're definitely going to get those notifications. And
how do people join the Flutter community Mastodon? Is that open to the public, or is that just?
I've not opened it up to the public because again, I'm actually. Do you know what? I'll tell you what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to open it up for the next hour. So if you're watching right now and you have the ability.
Woohoo! The live people get a bonus.
Yeah, right. Come watch the show. Maybe you get to get a Mastodon account. Right. Let's see if I can work.
We can even put you on. We can even put you on the stream if you're cool enough.
Where is it?
Vesselin's asking for an opinion of something that I haven't seen the question for. So, people, if you don't put a Q, it just blanks out in my brain. I don't even see what you're typing because I have to be filtered in watching the chat. I'm very good at that. I don't see Vesselin's original question, so I can't have an opinion about something I don't know the context of.
All right, so you have, there we go. Okay, so if you go to fluttercommunity.social, you can go sign up for a Mastodon account on the Flutter community account server. You have an hour, and then I'm shutting it back off again. So I don't know what time it is in your time zone. About an hour from now.
Just look down at your watch and add an hour.
Yeah,
really,
and add an hour, and that's when it's going to go off.
Yeah. Cool.
Right. Do I need to learn some native languages? The question is, do I need to learn some native languages like Swift to become to be a fully mobile developer? And the answer is no, but it doesn't hurt to learn more.
Right. You've got plenty of space still left in your brain. Use it. Yes, it makes you more valuable to everybody when you know more things. Trust me, I've had to test this over the decades.
Yeah. All right, then. We're going to call it then. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Go get your Mastodon account where you can. The reason why it's not opened up yet, by the way, is we don't want to just suddenly have an influx of like 20,000 users and the server just grinds to a halt, right? We want to slowly see how it behaves, and
Slowly drive it to a halt.
slowly drive it. Yeah.
Over
See if you
time,
can scale
yes.
it nicely. Anyway, all right then.
Cool.
Thank
Thanks,
everyone
Simon.
for joining
Thanks,
us.
everybody.
And
Yes.
thanks, Randall. And we'll see you again.
166 hours. 166 hours. Come back.
Same time, same better place. All right.
That's right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.